Ilona Mooney is a startup founder and advisor. Her company Work Ahead develops technology that enterprises use for verifying and advancing social sustainability at their international partners. Before becoming an entrepreneur, Ilona lived in 6 countries, worked for organizations like Ernst & Young and the United Nations, and started a program for startups solving societal and environmental challenges at Slush. She holds a Master of Science and Technology from Aalto University. Welcome, Ilona Mooney.
Thank you, Aatu. Nice to catch up with you.
Nice to catch up with you. It's been a long time since actually we worked together, kind of. You came to Nepal and my colleague took you to a far out village to test Work Ahead, the first prototype of the product.
That's true. That was at the very early stages of Work Ahead. It was a lovely trip. I had never been to Nepal, and we traveled, I think, 13 hours on a bus to test first versions of our video survey software with illiterate women who are working in the textile supply chain in Nepal. I had some lovely memories.
How was the trip for you? What do you remember from it?
I remember how surprising it was that our bus trip wasn't supposed to take 6 hours. It didn't. What did it take? I don't remember how many hours it took, but almost a day, like 16 hours or something. There had been flooding and the road was broken, and it kind of, that kind of moments remind you that when you live in Finland, you never have the issue that a bus trip takes 3 or 4 times longer. It's just, you can predict how a society operates. But in places like Nepal, there's always surprises. But everyone was really chill. We had people coming past by the bus, selling us things. It was quite comfortable, actually. But it made me appreciate how predictable and comfortable life is here, and how much we have here.
In Nepal, nothing is certain, but somehow everything works.
It's very creative, for sure.
Oh, yeah. What you came to Nepal to do that time? You came to test Work Ahead's first prototype, right?
That's correct. So I had been working in a number of large IT companies, as well as my kind of dream company, United Nations. And I had this dream that I somehow want to use technology to create a positive impact. And I always struggled with the idea that how can I create something that actually has an impact, that actually contributes? Because so often when I saw foreign aid, I was also kind of saddened by the fact that how hard it is to create a sustainable change. And then I figured out that the biggest change that I can contribute to is in the supply chains or relationships between Western companies and those in the emerging markets. I hold the belief that decent jobs where people are treated well and where they receive a living income, that's an excellent way of tackling poverty and ensuring people can lift themselves and their families out of poverty and send their kids to school and take care of themselves. But it's a fact that in many places, even if you work, you live in poverty, and it's a struggle for you. Yet often these people are making products that we buy. They're in the supply chains, or they're somehow connected with the Western companies. So there's an idea that when we come from Finland or Europe or US, we should select partners that take care of their workers and take responsibility that the working conditions meet universal or international living standards or minimum requirements. So I set myself out to develop technology that would help us to do so. And it's really simple. We just simply ask the people. And in Finland, everyone is used to getting worker well-being surveys or having mechanisms to do whistleblowing if there's an issue. But that's not reality for most of the world. Most workers in the world have never been asked for their opinion. And we initially started with text chat version, where we would be able to ask questions via text chatting from the workers. But that didn't work because in many places the workers are illiterate. And in many places they don't have mobile phones. The employees don't know their workers' mobile phones if they do. And they may not have mobile phones at all. So we redesigned our approach using video surveys. So it's like talking head like we are right now, asking questions in a friendly way, and then icons pop up in the screen. And this is what we tested the first time in Nepal with a project that Aatu was involved with then. And we've come a long way since then.
What's the situation now?
Yeah, we've rolled out to tens of thousands of workers in, I should have looked up what's our latest number of countries, but we've done projects from Haiti to Afghanistan, from Costa Rica to Zambia and Taiwan. So we've been in the kind of most challenging places in the world. We've helped brands and investors hear directly from people impacted by their work and take action that changes living and working conditions for the better.
And is the product still working in the same way that the workers put on the headphones and they get a video in front of them that's in their own language? If it's done in Nepal, the talking head is asking them the conditions in Nepali, and then they answer a bunch of questions like, "Are you satisfied with your salary, or are you, getting food and shelter and all these basic things covered?"
Yeah, so the basic idea is still the same, although of course we've developed so much in the different areas. So now we have AI-powered technology that creates the talking head in different languages and different ethnicities. And we have a vast question library that's mapped to these international standards. We're just publishing a new question module on children's rights and maternity questions together with the Save the Children that was developed just recently. We're now early next year developing a new module for artisan workers. But it's all based on international frameworks and ideas that how do we perceive that? What is a decent job? How should we treat people? And how can we put that into questions and then verify, is that the case for these people? Where are we doing well? What should we improve? And typically it's the first time those people are asked about their life and work. So it's very inspiring to share this kind of best practice for human resources management, kind of employee engagement idea that when you treat your workers well, they'll do a better job. And by asking questions, you can see which part of your organization are workers happy and where do the managers maybe need more training. It's very inspiring also for managers to get this data.
One question I was thinking last night about this interview, and I wanted to ask something about the work ahead process. Is when the workers are given the questionnaire in front of them, and one by one they're going to answer that. What makes you sure that the manager of the factory, for example, is not there behind them telling them what to say?
That's a very important question, and I think that stems from our long history of audits, where we've traditionally sent somebody over and with a checklist, and if they fail, the company fails something, then they will maybe not get the contract or they will get a note. So idea is about catching them doing something wrong. Our starting point is actually very different. When we introduce work ahead to the factories and local partners, we start by explaining that Western companies ask feedback from workers sometimes every week, sometimes every month. And we explain how they use this information and how valuable it is. So even from the very beginning, it's about introducing the idea that every worker is different, and hearing their opinion helps you become a better company, and how they get advantage from the results. Obviously, we of course also have a lot of metadata tracking, and we have some like algorithms that we run through the data to analyze if there is patterns that are unusual. For example, maybe in some cases we see that every worker will respond that I have an excellent relationship with my superior. And maybe from the Western perspective, you would say, oh, maybe they're lying. Maybe their boss is pressuring them to say this. Well, the truth may be that a modern culture where it's safe to express your negative opinion about your boss hasn't developed yet. So then we actually often talk about that, hey, there's different maturity levels among your partners, that at these partners, a Western culture where, or I shouldn't say maybe Western, but a culture of openness has developed where workers feel comfortable to express differing opinions. And there's other partners where, for one reason or the other, some workers may not feel comfortable to express opinion about their superiors that are negative. Our questionnaires are always a mixture of different questions. So there may be questions about the superiors, but there's often questions about the climate change, resiliency, demographics. So in all of these cases, you will get valuable information about the living and working conditions, even if the company isn't mature. And now I want to circle back to your question, that is the manager pressuring, because actually that's a very rare case. Often we work with companies that want to treat their workers well. So it's not about catching them doing something wrong, but introducing them a new method for doing that better and verifying and monitoring how the workers feel. We train them, and we ask them for supplementing information. And in some high-risk countries, we also recommend that there is an external third party present for the surveys. So then there's somebody checking that everyone has the privacy to respond honestly. So we have a number of methods to address that, but the immediate fear that somebody's trying to cheat with this data, actually that's not true. It's much more often that how do we make the workers feel comfortable to express their genuine opinion? That's more the angle we're working on.
Got it. And are you certifying these companies somehow? Do they get like work ahead stamp or something after they pass the nice factory test?
Well, we provide them with proof that they survey the workers and they get access to results. And actually, initially, our first idea is that companies would like to share this data immediately with their customers, even with consumers. And that's something that's still on the horizon. But most companies want to do this as a first step to understand better what's their current human rights and supply chain sustainability or partner kind of impact. And it's not about communicating first, but first ensuring that kind of alignment within the company that, hey, we have an ambition to be sustainable in our supply chains and respect human rights. Are we doing so? And this is a method to achieve a scale that's otherwise hard to achieve. So if you have hundreds of suppliers or even tens of suppliers, it's impossible to visit all of them, and you won't be there every day. So it's a way to get access to a larger number of people expressing their opinion that, hey, this is how I'm being treated. And a lot of time we discover really lovely things, so many things that are already well. So sometimes we focus on all of the problems, but we forget to celebrate that, hey, there are some really nice developments here. So I think that's also important to keep in mind, to celebrate the successes we've made, because that kind of gives us the energy to pursue this kind of work and tackle the issues. There's always new issues. There's always better we can do. So it's good to have a balanced approach.
Of course. Have you personally been in a lot of countries testing this besides Nepal? You said you guys did Taiwan and Afghanistan and everything. Did you go there yourself?
No, typically it's either the companies themselves or it's a local partner in some cases. It's, for example, in Western countries too, often the HR surveys are carried out by the HR. So it's kind of introducing that mindset. And sometimes it's an external body, but it makes it much more cost efficient that it can be carried out locally rather than somebody traveling from afar.
Got it. What are your future plans for work ahead? Like now you developed AI and it sounds much more developed than when I saw the product last time years ago. So I assume you have some crazy cool plans in the future ahead.
So there's interesting legal development. So European Union is implementing a new legislation that requires large companies to take responsibility for human rights in their supply chains. So this has never been the case before. So legally, it's been okay to buy things from a company that's not treating people well or is breaking the laws. Like there's no legal consequences, and that's about to change. And I think that reflects the shift we have from kind of more consumerist society to more conscious society and conscious way of doing business, where we are aware that, hey, whatever choices we make, we impact the world, we impact people around us, and we are responsible to a degree for the choices we make. So it's something that I feel we are aligned with to create software that furthers that kind of aim, where we have a better visibility and better tools to ensure that our impact is positive. And I think we've been a bit of a forerunner, making technology that very rarely other companies are even tackling. There's very few other companies in this space. So I'm excited that there's more focus on our role when it comes to global development. How can we, as like Western companies and Western investors, how can we do things in a little bit different way that leads to better outcomes in the emerging markets?
Got it.
I think that's what we're excited about.
You mentioned the word impact here many times, and it's a very trendy word, as in like this podcast name is Impact Rockstars, obviously. Before this interview, you said you've been not using this word much recently in past years, and it has developed quite a bit since you started. Could you elaborate a bit, like what do you see this impact entrepreneurship, where it comes from, and what's happened with it during the years?
It's a great question, because I myself started together with a good friend, Charlotte Liukas, a program at Slush called Slush Impact about 8 years ago. And back then, entrepreneurship was about how can I make money as quickly, regardless of how. That was kind of the ethos. That was how businesses were built. And I kind of wondered, like, how can we create something that creates something positive for the world? And it was an odd kind of idea back then. We had a big green stage, and we had Martti Ahtisaari, who was the famous peace builder from Finland, on stage. And we created a collaboration with UNICEF and hosted a conference on innovation in kind of social innovation and technology alongside Slush. I think a lot has changed since then. After a few years of Slush Impact, it was so mainstream that it got integrated within the whole Slush. It had kind of earned that it is meaningful to speak about the impact of your business within the whole conference. And now, interestingly, something new is emerging. Is it enough that we try to measure some kind of outside KPIs about the business and try to apply them uniformly across very different businesses? Or is impact, rather than looking at the outside impact, should we also focus on the kind of awareness or consciousness that emerges from within and that drives our decisions? And I'm increasingly saying that impact metrics alone are empty. We should look within to be in alignment with, firstly, ourselves, that we feel we're doing the right things, that we're pursuing our dreams, that we feel good about our lives and our work. And we should be aware how we impact other people, close or far. And I think that's where the focus should now be. Some people call it conscious entrepreneurship, but I don't know. I don't think there's a good word for it yet. And I think this goes together with the movement for yoga and meditation and being more, I think the word woke is being used in a kind of negative way, but kind of being aware that people come from different privileges and different backgrounds, and how do we create kind of with businesses a world that is good for everyone and that's welcoming for everyone, and that takes humanity forward.
What are these traditional metrics of impact that you feel have become somehow empty little by little?
I think it was never agreed what are the right impact metrics. It's even like if you go to an impact investing conference, there's big debates. EU had this big struggle. How do you define like ESG metrics? And now they've published this massive, I think it's like 900 pages manual on like classification of what is impact. And now investors must meet some of this. It's incredibly difficult. And any attempt to have like unified metrics is so complex. So, of course, there's been some metrics like how many people do you impact? But then the question is how? You know, if you are just barely impacting them versus you're giving a big impact. So I think, of course, there's also more movement to understand how you impact. And then it's starting to be more that kind of, you know, like how is this, everything I'm doing, how do I understand what are the positive and negative impacts I'm creating for my stakeholders.
What was the original impact idea of an impact of the Slush Impact program? What did you guys want to do with that in 8 years' time?
We wanted to bring together people who felt comfortable talking about grand development challenges. Like, could we speak about the fact that still a lot of people don't have access to water, or they don't have electricity, or they are hungry? And could we talk about how can entrepreneurship tackle that kind of challenges? And of course, there's not just challenges in emerging markets. There's things like mental health issues and so many other kind of social issues and environmental issues that we should look at in Western countries as well. So that was kind of the original starting point, that this is a discussion we need to have in entrepreneurship, not just what's the fastest way to make money.
And how do you feel now, 8 years later? Did you succeed in creating this discussion?
Well, it's interesting that it's not a fringe thinking anymore. It's mainstream, and now there's kind of this new idea emerging. So there's been new kind of mini conferences popping up around Slush, because Slush is the impact of Slush is too mainstream. So the forerunners are again creating something a little bit separate from Slush to kind of create a new version of entrepreneurship, I would say. So I think, yes, we succeeded bringing it to the mainstream back then.
And as I understood, besides conversations, there was this accelerator, Impact Startup Accelerator with the Slush Impact program. Was that in the beginning there, or was it developed after you started?
So we started at the first year by bringing startups from emerging markets. So we collaborated with certain hubs, and then we brought them to Slush. And for the second year, we're thinking, we want to do more. We want to offer them some kind of help to take advantage of Slush. So if you came from Uganda or Zambia and you had never been to Europe before, you had never met European investors or American investors, a lot of the participants were a little bit lost. So then we created programming around the visit. We called it Global Impact Accelerator. And that's still ongoing as of now. There's still a collaboration between the Foreign Ministry and Slush to bring startups from emerging markets to attend Slush. And it's a nice global perspective to Slush that's quite Eurocentric still.
Do you remember any success stories from startups which emerged from Slush Impact and got to the world map?
I haven't been so much in touch with them lately. I've got to look up later. And in a way, I see success maybe more broadly, because what if you start something and it fails? Then often those people will go ahead and start something different, and maybe that becomes a big success. So then would you say that it was a big failure, that this the first company? Actually, maybe that was supposed to happen and they were supposed to go ahead and build something different. So I think I have a little bit wider perspective on what is success or what is failure.
What have you learned so far from your successes and failures on your journey as an impact entrepreneur? Can you remember any specific things you'd like to share?
Well, maybe I would share one key insight, and that is to be true to yourself. There is only one of you, and there's a reason you are interested in things you're interested in, and there's a reason you're skilled at the things you're skilled at, and we all see the world differently, and that's a tremendous value. So go ahead pursuing a life that looks like you, and solving issues that are meaningful for you in the way that aligns with yourself. And we face this immense pressure from culture and society to conform to those ideas, and often they are in conflict within ourselves. So, for example, I used to work with a designer who was most creative at around maybe 10 or 11 p.m. And if we were an organization where you have to work from 9 to 5, she would have struggled a lot. She wouldn't have been really creative. So that's just like a simple example and like an easy example to grasp that patterns of working and patterns of doing things are kind of, when we set them in stone, we often will go against something that feels good for us. And it's good to kind of create flexibility in how we work and what we want to do in life, so that we can be in alignment with ourselves and other people around us.
To me, it sounds like.
Yeah, go ahead.
To me, it sounds like you're instead of focusing on the exterior, what you have outside of yourself, you would advise entrepreneurs to focus inside and look at themselves and creating better world that way by being conscious of themselves and creating impact through that. Is that what you mean?
Well, partly yes, and not to forget who you are. I feel like life is a constant journey to becoming more of ourselves, being more bravely everything we are, and accepting ourselves. And in some ways, I want to say it's also important to see how are you perceived by others, because then you're going to get mirrored and feedback, and you grow from that. But so often we carry ideas from others within us, and that shapes our choices. For example, I mentor some founders, and it's quite easy to see when somebody is pursuing something because it sounds good, but their heart is not in it. And it's so different when somebody I really like this. I have no idea how I'm going to make money with this. I don't know if this is even a business, but this is something I want to do. And there's such a different kind of air around somebody like that compared with somebody who's like calculating. I could maybe make a business around this, and it's kind of empty. There's no heart. It's just a very different.
No passion, right?
It can look like passion, but I think real passion is when you actually really care about it, what you're doing.
Where did this work ahead idea come from? Like, did you care about the idea before it manifested into the technology?
Well, I had been living in emerging markets. So I did an exchange year in Brazil when I was still quite young. So I could see poverty in a way that I had never experienced before in my life, coming from Finland. That's a very equal country. And I felt that we've been given a lot. Shouldn't we be using that to advance humanity for everyone in the world? So I think that's partially where my idea for work ahead came. How can we create tech that brings the perspectives from emerging markets on the same page, that we can see what life is like for them, and we can take decisions that impact them positively rather than kind of ignore or be oblivious to how we impact others on the other side of the world.
What were the biggest challenges you faced on your journey as, let's say, with work ahead or as an impact entrepreneur? Do you remember any serious obstacle?
Creating something new is it's like they're going from zero to something. So sometimes it's hard to get started. I think for many years I was like, I'd like to start a company. That's probably why I started Slush Impact too, that I was like, I enjoyed being around entrepreneurs, but I could never find, entrepreneurs who were building something that I'd like to build. I was kind of bored with a lot of the startup ideas. Like, I'm not interested in optimizing, Facebook post timings and automating them. I think that's kind of trivial. I think we should tackle problems that are meaningful, and I struggle to find those. So, of course, one of the things, how do you get started with something? And then how do you approach the challenges that come along your way? You need to be really comfortable with making mistakes and kind of embarrassing mistakes. So you need to be really humble that, okay, that didn't go well. Well, next time it will go better. So you kind of need this resilient approach where you are quite, I'd say, firm in believing that, what I'm doing is valuable and I'm here on a path of learning. And even if I make mistakes, it's okay. And this can be really tough. And it comes to play with your ideas of your childhood. Was it okay to make mistakes? Do you carry a lot of kind of shame if you do something? Do you worry about it at night? As an entrepreneur, you just gotta let it go and look into the future and just do better next time. So I think it's a lot of question of mental resiliency. Also about honesty. So it's quite interesting what's going on in the crypto space currently, and how delusional kind of everyone's been around, even really questionable practices. I think it reflects how far we are from truth, but also we sometimes lie to ourselves. So I think it's an important criteria as an entrepreneur to be honest with yourself and not trick yourself into believing that you're doing right things when you actually aren't. So it's a journey of self-discovery.
Do you think this honesty and awareness can be learned? And you mentioned before yoga and meditation, for example. Are there such practices that can benefit any conscious entrepreneurs or wannabe conscious entrepreneurs?
So I like the idea of free will and believing that everyone knows what's best for them. For me, I enjoy doing yoga because it helps me be more in tune with my body and connect with myself in a more holistic way than just my mind. But whatever works for you, pursue that. Maybe it's sports, maybe it's something else. And also in different times of my life, different things call out for me. Don't go after someone else, but listen to yourself. And I think we're so used to listening to everyone around us that we forget to listen to ourselves. So listen to what makes sense for you, even if it doesn't make sense for so many other people. But listen to why doesn't it make sense and kind of reflect, okay, this is the feedback I'm getting and I believe this. For example, I would say that when I speak about are we responsible for choosing partners that take care of their workers well, there's going to be people who say, look, there's so many companies who don't care. They actually don't care. They just want to get the cheapest. And that's the truth. There are some companies who don't care. There's going to be people who haven't developed in the way that they would take responsibility for anyone else except their own happiness. And it's their journey to come to a different place. I see a lot of people who are, who see the world a little bit more holistically, that they say, hey, I'm in a position to choose partners who take care of their workers. And that's what I want to do because I can. It's not about measuring something, but it's the right way of doing business. And that's why I want to do that. So those two things can be true at the same time. That's sometimes what we forget. We're so polarized and we have two different perspectives. But I think the truth, there's many truths. And it's just about being committed to what feels right for us and pursuing that. And maybe the other people who don't care about this now, maybe there will be a day they care about it. That's what I think. And I think maybe this podcast will serve the same purpose, that some people who've been reflecting, maybe should I start something? Maybe they get encouraged to create something of their own or become more aware that, hey, I should be thinking about these things because it's the right thing. It's how I want to be.
Hopefully, that's where I'm aiming at. I hope the listeners get something out of this. I wanted to ask you the same question that I ask from every guest in this podcast about the future. This is my favorite question, and the question is, what if everything would go your way 70 years in the future? It would be Ilona's utopia, and things would have gone well, optimally, as you, instead of the dystopia, and we would be there right now in the future, teleported there, and you would look outside the window. What would you see? How are the people treating each other? How the societies function? What exists?
Wow, 70 years. I like to think of humanity to follow a path where everyone is thriving. So to create a place where we all have opportunities and we all have, we've tackled the main development issues, and look, if we tested open AI's new chat GPT, we're going to eliminate a lot of jobs, and we're going to create abundance that we haven't seen today. And I think there's enough for everyone to live comfortably, and it's going to free us to pursue more of our creative side. What is it that we want to create in this world? And that's kind of what I'd like to see, that we thrive and we create an environment where we treat everyone well, in the way that, you're free to express yourself and pursue whatever interests you. And whatever interests you, it's not away from me. You can go ahead and create your version of anything, and it can coexist with my version. I think that's the world I want to see.
Let's build it.
Yeah.
Okay, Ilona, I think that's all I wanted to ask from you today. It was a true pleasure to hear your point of views regarding everything we've talked about, actually. You're a veteran of this impact entrepreneur, and it's an honor to talk to you.
Thank you for the lovely discussion. And it's always exciting for me to recount a little bit of where we've come from and where are we today. And I hope that inspires listeners to, if you haven't started anything and you're thinking about starting something, I want to say go for it. You're free to email me if you have questions about starting a company. I often mentor startups, and I'd love to help out if there's something I can help you with. But thank you, Aatu, for doing this. And I hope you're enjoying your day in Nepal. It's been lots of snow in Helsinki, but it's all melting today. So it's cold and wet in Helsinki.
Oh, it's the white Christmas is gone, yeah? It's almost white.
It may still be white Christmas because it snowed so much, so we have piles of snow everywhere. But let's see what happens.
Let's hope so. I'm here surrounded by Tibetan monasteries and a lot of sunshine outside the window, so it's a very different type of Christmas for me.
That sounds lovely. Thank you so much for doing this, Aatu, and look forward to catching up with you soon again.
Thank you, Ilona.